Joining me today is Rachel Franklin Hayes, Head of Client Success at Pikkal Co, a leading corporate podcast agency throughout Asia. Rachel has a huge passion for psychology and human connections, which has served her well in her career. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Rachel. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yes, I am super excited about our conversation today because when I was doing some research on the episode today and learning a bit more about yourself and your role, I was so curious about the fact that this podcast agency is all across Asia and there's so many things to dive into there. Sometimes I like to leave a bit of mystery to hear from you in the actual episode. So I like to keep the learning for when I get to hear from you. And so maybe just starting out with a little bit about your background, your career, and then how your motivations have evolved as you've got into this current role that you're in at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant, of course. So for me, I think everything that I've really ever done professionally and educationally has kind of stemmed from a love of people. After I finished school, I went and studied psychology at university. And I guess the motivations behind that were, again, I just wanted to know more about how people ticked, why people ticked in that way, and really like what makes us who we are, what actually is going on here. And that was fantastic. And alongside studying, I worked in a series of customer service jobs, sales jobs, and like hospitality, bar work, all of those kind of typical student things. And really found that actually within customer service and within sales, I loved it and I shone in it because it was really just connecting things that were my motivations for studying psychology, along with like actually helping people with the tiniest things, like picking out a new coat or what they wanted to drink. But it was such small connections that made me really just fall in love with customer service as well. And it was in those years after graduating when I really wanted to turn that actually into something that can be my career and something that felt like maybe I could go further with it than I felt like I could within working in retail, for example. So I worked for a SaaS company for a while. We produced tech for the hospitality industry and I led their customer service and sales team. That was really, really cool and a lot of digital customer service going on there. So I absolutely adored that. And that's a fantastic team. And then I think my life took a slightly different direction and I wanted more. So I started working, as you rightly said, with Pikkal. And we are a podcast guesting agency and we're now working with clients like all over the world. So we've got a huge presence in the US, the UK, and like you rightly said, we were founded and originally established in Asia. So we work with clients and basically develop their personal brands and get them like out there talking and just inspiring more people to do the same. So that's really like why I am where I am. And it's all really stemmed from that just love of people and love of connecting people. And it's just it's a fantastic thing that I get to use every day in my job.
Oh, that's awesome. I very much resonate with that because even here at Gameball, I do customer success and everything is truly about understanding our customers and how loyalty is going to work really well for them and how their business model is going to benefit from that aspect. But there's so much that goes into that. And really, when you think about the fact that people are at the heart of every single business, that's actually what business is it can really help you understand further about how to work with different groups of people, how to serve the right group of customers, how to operate in different ways. So I think you taking this from a human connection approach is a very interesting way. And the psychology really helps you understand the why behind things and the motivation. So I think you'll bring a very interesting perspective to our whole conversation today and obviously a lot of interesting experiences as well. And so maybe just to kind of kick things off, the mark of excellent customer experience and why?
I think for me, like excellent customer experience really is customer experience that comes from a place of feeling human. And it's not going to surprise you that I say that based on everything that I've said previously. But we are very much in like a world now where it's so easy to be lost within tech and AI. And so many industries are now implementing this in so many different parts of their process and their funnel, which is great. And it's fantastic for like productivity. It really assists us all in the way that we work. But I think if you lose that human touch, that human connection with both your customers and with your branding and with everything that makes up what your business actually is, and that's quite a sad thing. So I really love human connection, especially in the customer experience. And I think if you can't do that, if you're in an industry that can't do that, then at least make the rest of it efficient, because we've all argued with like really irritating chatbots and email chains, right? Like, so if you can't do the human connection thing, at least make it really efficient and make sure that the AI and the systems you're putting in place are really actually helping the people that you're serving. Like they've still got to be the main motivation, right?
Absolutely. And actually, so many of the guests we've brought on this show, we talk about retention, and I probably sound like a broken record to anybody that's been below thoughts of my show at this point. But we really do talk about retention from so many different angles, and it really does come down to customer at the end of the day, and that customer being a human and trying to figure out what motivates them and how data drives it, this drives it, that drives it. But really, it really does come down to that human connection. I think that's why it's so important. And so how we just touched on psychology a little bit, and you talked about a bit of it in your past experience and what you're interested in, kind of filtering off this first question that I asked, how do you think understanding psychology changes the way that companies can treat their customers?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, if we like strip it all the way back, then it comes back to how us as humans are actually making decisions and how we're actually one around. And this is really important for both the sales and the customer experience like journey here. So obviously with our very logical brain, we assess things like product descriptions and pricing and spec and all of those things. Like they're the slightly drier stuff we process and we make logical decisions on it most of the time. But before that happens, the emotional brain is very much in full swing. And even subliminally, like before you think you're making decisions, you're making judgments on absolutely everything. So that emotional brain is really in the front seat. And if we can harness that, then that's where we win our customers' trust, our customers' loyalty, our customers' feelings. And ultimately, all of that is what actually relates to retention at the end of the day. Like maybe the logical brain is going to dictate why they might choose your product over another product. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not winning their trust, their loyalty, and their empathy, and they don't feel like they can relate to your brand, then you're really going to lose them on that feeling side of things. So I think understanding that as a baseline is so important. And I'd go even further to say in the very digital worlds that we're in at the moment, where everyone's got an online presence and customers expect you to have an online presence, for example, that is really the key to harnessing that connection and that trust and that loyalty very early on. Because ultimately, clients and customers are now making these decisions about who you are and why they should work with your business before they've even looked at your product fully. Like everyone can think of brands that they don't necessarily purchase from, but they know about and probably will purchase from at some point, simply just because they've built up social media communities and they have a cool CEO who you relate to and who tells personal stories and all of that great stuff that goes on behind it. And what they're doing well is capturing the feelings and building the loyalty, building the community. And honestly, I think that's the future of it. And when it comes to understanding like the psychology of like consumer behavior, the fact that feelings play such a strong and such an early part of decisions is really important for us to acknowledge here.
And almost even treat it like a KPI in of itself, meaning if we can measure that as the way that we measure other data and statistics, I feel like we would keep such a stronger pulse to it because you're actually thinking about why it matters. It's not just a nice, touchy-feely thing to think about. It's actually genuine business driving decisions. And so
For sure.
I'm also curious about how this kind of methodology or this thinking or this understanding helps you to keep your clients happy on your team at Pikkal.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, I think again it has to come back to trust. And ultimately, exactly as you just rightly said, the KPIs, it's so hard to measure like positive feeling. Like how are you even putting that into a box? Like what does that look like on your KPI spreadsheet? And I think the bit that we can actually tangibly measure and the bit that we can actually reinforce here is whether or not the trust that's set up in the sale process, like the reason people are choosing to buy from you, is that being reinforced at every single touch point of their customer journey while they're with you. So whatever you're saying about your brand on your website, whatever you're saying about your brand, when you're speaking openly, like, is that something that's actually being reinforced in their journey? So obviously what I do with my clients is we very much work on their personal brands and we build out their own like talking points. And when they go on podcasts, obviously they've got certain things that they want to discuss with people. So we very much like talk to them in the early stages about like, this is how you can build your brand. This is how we can harness your talking points. This is how we can reach your audience. And then really the proof is in the pudding there. It's just making sure that actually that audience is who they're getting in front of and that trust is being built and they're able to have the conversations that we're framing early on. And I think that's fundamentally it. When we're talking about harnessing trust, it doesn't have to be this abstract concept that's hard. Like, are you actually doing what you're saying you're doing? And if you are, then you're going to be gathering and making the most of that trust that you've captured early on in the sale.
I like how simple that is because I feel like the word or the phrase or the concept of gaining and building trust is quite actually abstract in general. It's just like, okay, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, because
Again,
it's a great thing, right? Like we know it in friendships, we know it in relationships, like we know what trust means when it comes to another person, but what actually is that for a client? What is it in business?
exactly. And so I really like the way that you say, are you proving or are you putting, like, I guess, are you putting evidence to the fact of what you're saying you're going to do? And I think that's a huge aspect from going from the sales side of things to the customer success side of things in any business that it is, whether it's a brick and mortar store to a big software company, it doesn't matter. It's really saying, are we committing to what we say we are going to deliver on? And do we build that trust with the customer, which I think is
100%. And
easy.
ultimately, if we're building that trust and we're proving that, then we're going to be influencing their loyalty and their retention further down the road as well, because
Yeah.
they know that they will get what they've hung their hat on getting. And I think everyone, like everyone listening to this, both you and I, we're going to be able to think of times when you've actually been let down by a brand. And when that happens, it's inevitably because they just haven't delivered on what they said they were going to. And the reason that disappointment's there is because they lost your trust. And it should be a key KPI, right? We really should be focusing on this trust and authenticity in business.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And actually, a quick example that came to mind that was a negative situation that turned positive. So they lost my trust, but they gained it right back with their
Oh, I
customer
like
service, which
this.
was very intriguing. I thought you might find it interesting. But I've actually mentioned this example before, is that I was really on the hunt for really good hair care products because I was having issues with my hair and I had to figure it out and whatever. That like the normal drugstore stuff wasn't working. So I went to find this one company called Pros that does custom shampoo and conditioner. And everything on the website talks about the fact that it's built for you. It's going to help you with whatever problems you have. It's going to get you better hair. So I trusted them because I care a lot about what my hair looks like, how I feel
Yeah.
like it, whatever is going on with my hair. So it took a lot of trust for me to go and order from there because it was an expensive product. It wasn't cheap. So I really had to make that decision. So I got the shampoo and conditioner and I used it for about 2 months and things potentially got worse with my hair than instead of them promising that it was going to get better. And I did the quiz, I did everything, I did exactly as they told me to do, and nothing worked out. So at that point, I was pretty pissed off because I was like, they're saying all these things. They said, of course, we'll figure out your formula for you, whatever. When I reached out to them, I have never received such awesome and fast and incredibly caring service before, where they were like, we are so sorry that you experienced that. That should not have been the case. Let's redo the quiz. We'll send you a new shampoo and conditioner for free. We'll make sure that the ingredients make sense. Maybe we'll figure out what was going wrong with the first one. And then they sent me a new shipment of product for free. And they checked in every, I would say like 2 to 3 weeks saying like, how's everything going? And it went much better after that. And so now I'm definitely going to be a lifelong customer of theirs because not only was it, sure, we got off to a rocky start, but they dealt with it so well that trust made me think they're actually living up to what they say they're trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think again that's just so important because it isn't necessarily like how we build that trust, but like ultimately the people running these businesses are human as well.
Yes.
And if someone drops the ball, actually how is that recovered? Because fundamentally, like if you're running a business, you're dealing with people who are choosing to invest in your service, and whether that's £1 or £1 million, that's huge. So
Exactly.
how do you recover that? Like, are you still, even at those negative touch points in the customer journey, are you actually building on that promise? Are you building on that trust, or are you gonna stick them in a really awful holds line or internet chat bot and make them depressed by the end of it? So
Yes.
I think it's a really cool like lesson to be learned in customer service as well, because like it's okay to mess up, just handle it with integrity, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And it's nice when you see companies that do that well, because not that they're far and few in between, but I've definitely had more bad experiences than good as a consumer, which I'm sure a lot of people would be in the
Yeah.
same boat. But at least you got some companies that do it well.
Yeah. Well, if we
So
take it back to kind of those emotional decisions, like once they let down, you're like, oh no, they're not doing what they say they're going to do, and you're feeling like all sorts of negative things right now. So to have someone actually hold your hand through that process and be like, no, we're going to prove to you we're great, like that's perfect customer experience. It's like such a good example.
no, very true. And I guess switching gears a little bit here. So in your roles, your current role, your previous role, even just what you do with the podcasting agency where you're helping people
Mhm.
build their personal brands and getting them to know exactly how to communicate that, I feel as if one strong component of all of this is a theme of storytelling. And switching gears a little bit here, because storytelling was something that I thought would be a very interesting topic to dive into with someone like yourself, with your experiences as well as what your current role is. So why don't we dive into that side of things? And maybe you can talk to me a little bit more about your tactics for storytelling in sales and customer experiences.
Yeah, of course. Like, honestly, I don't think it's even that far removed from the
Yeah,
conversation we've
fair
been
enough.
having because, like, fundamentally, storytelling, right? It's connection again. So
Yeah,
all of the best stories. If we're talking, like, I'm a huge reader. I love like fantasy books, for example. But all of the reasons we connect with that is because it's getting to us on an emotional level. And in the past, let's say even 5 years, business storytelling is getting really good, like to the
Mm,
point where people and brands are really making us invest in them and making us interested in following their stories and just learning more. Like there's CEO figures now who I will like actively consume content from because they're interesting. Like one that springs to mind for me is Grace Beverly, who's the founder of Tala and Shreddy, which are some like fitness and clothing brands in the UK.
okay.
Fantastic, awesome figure who does fantastic business storytelling. And that's why she builds such a cool community around her. So harnessing that and actually learning how you can do that for yourself and for your own brand is just epic. It's huge. And that's really is what we do with our clients. And I think it's a really cool thing to put into your like customer experience process and your sales process. Potentially like the first place that this is at home, if you don't know whether you're implementing business storytelling or not at the moment,
Yeah.
then I would say to almost look inwards at yourself and what you're sharing online. So like, what does your LinkedIn look like? Are you sharing, like resharing other people's posts, or are you not afraid of putting a little bit of like a how I got there story up? Because
Mm,
everyone has one, and your unique story, whether that's the story of how you built your brand or how you got to where you are in your career today, that is literally going to be one of the only things that sets you apart from other people, because you're never going to have the most knowledge and you're never going to have the most experience, like whether that be in years or like anything else. Like you're just potentially not going to win in those factors. So when you're trying to compete in such a really saturated world, like what actually sets you apart? And what's
mhm.
going to set you apart is your unique story, whether
Yeah.
that be the story of your brand or of you. So these founder stories and these personal journey stories are so important. And there's something that really can make you stand out when you're sharing them online. So I
Yeah.
think that's one thing, because we've already discussed how customers are making these decisions before they even choose to
Mm,
even talk to a sales rep. So sharing your journey is going to be a huge influencer in that. And
okay.
then when it comes back to the sales process, I think implementing storytelling at that point is another thing you can do. Are you actually showing a prospective client like what the future will look like as the client with you? Are you painting their imagination? Are you getting them geared up? And are they actually able to be excited about that?
Yeah.
Because that's what a good story can do at that point as well. Like, this is what your journey is going to look like. This is where you can grow to. Like, inspire them, paint that picture, and it really the rest of it will place, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Actually, on the side of Gameball, I run my own business and we help people get ready for interviews. And this is the number one thing that is a gap for people, because I think the concept with storytelling, it's very intriguing in how complex it is, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because everyone knows that storytelling is really important. To me, it's understood in business storytelling, personal storytelling, if you're applying for a job, whatever it is, but it's actually hard to get it down right, or to know exactly how to go about implementing that. And so I'm curious from your point of view. So one thing that I really care about with this show is, can someone walk away from the episode having something actionable to take away from it, or something that they can literally end the episode, go to the office and do right away? So I'm curious now, because even I'm wondering, based on what you've just said now, because it's spinning a whole bunch of wheels in my head, is what kind of questions should I be asking myself as a business owner, or what kind of things should I be thinking about if I don't have storytelling as part of my business or my retention experience? And how would I go about even starting to implement that or think about that? Or what are just some questions
Yeah.
that pop in your mind for almost to do an audit on how to do that?
Amazing. So yeah, I think let's talk about it from the perspective of your brand. So whether this is your business or whether this is yourself, effectively we're looking at that founder's journey to the A to B. The art of creating this into a story and actually getting this on paper is to start to look at the steps between A and B, because it's dead boring for me to say I studied psychology and now I work in podcast guesting. That's
Yep.
a linear line, and that's not something that's going to catch anyone's attention.
Yep.
So what matters along this route is reflect on your like aha moments. And that could be when you chose to like make a career change. Even if this is boring at the moment, like you chose to make the change because you wanted more money or because you weren't finding it fun anymore. Like it doesn't matter what the reason is. Maybe you realized something was wrong with another product and that's why you created your own product. Like what's the aha moment? And just put it down in black and white. And then look at the emotions that underpin that. So I chose to change my career because I started to find it boring. And the emotions that underpin that was actually like, I realized I genuinely wasn't fulfilled in what I was doing before. I really needed more to make me live a more fulfilled, a more genuine, a more authentic life. So now, even just by focusing in on my one aha moment, I studied psychology. I went through a series of jobs. I got to the point where I didn't know what to do with myself. I was stuck. I really was at a loss. So I looked back at everything that I needed in my life and everything that actually did fulfill me and set off on a path to actually make that happen, which is how we got to where we were at the moment. And it's just something so small like that. Just reflect on that aha. So whether it's how your brand came about, whether it's how you made a choice that got you to where you are today, but just find one aha moment. And my suggestion would be to write that down and then go and create a LinkedIn post about it. Or if you're feeling really brave, talk to the camera and make a quick video and post that online and really start to share that journey. Like what the best brands are doing is really making that journey part of their community because other people will relate to your aha moment. So whether that's your lack of fulfillment, like go and find those people. Those people are your people. So use that as the linchpin for what your personal brand is going to sit on.
I really like that. And it actually made me think of when you talked about your career or just how you got to where you are right now at the very beginning of our episode. And the one thing that really resonated or jumped out at me while you were describing your career was when you said, I knew I wanted more. And you emphasized that. And it made me actually resonate with that feeling because I felt that feeling before. I know what that feels like. And so it made me want to listen more to what you had to say because it said it wasn't just I went from here to here. It was here's the journey I took. Here's how I grew from that time. Here's how I developed my like the emotional underpinnings, all that kind of stuff. There's so much more to it. And I think even when I think back on some of my favorite brands, a lot of them are based on me resonating with the story of the business or something like that. That is more than just the product or the service or something like that. It has something to do with storytelling elements. So I think those aha moments are very, very special because it can happen personally in the business, whatever it might be. Even if you're not the founder of the business, doesn't mean that you can't communicate those aha moments and talk about your journey.
Absolutely. And even within the business, like within the business's discovery, within the business's growth, there's always going to be these moments where it's like, actually, we realized we were doing totally the wrong thing. So we redid all of it. And there's always going to be something like that. And I think people from a personal branding point of view can reflect on it within their own lives and their own career. But from a business point of view, this is just your founder's journey. This is why you actually established that. And anyone who has spotted a gap in the market or created a business, they've done it for a reason. And that emotional underpinning of the reason is what they need to go and shout about, I think.
No, I think that is it's such a nice reminder because we haven't actually really talked that much about storytelling or that aspect of the human connection in your company's brand or the way that you go about delivering that customer experience. And it's so important because it's a not necessarily a simple way, but it's a really easy way to connect with your customers and be able to deliver an exceptional experience, bring it all back to the psychology of things and the why behind that human connection. So I think you've really brought it all together from the very beginning of our conversation to the way that we talked about the psychology of things to how we talked about the storytelling. It kind of brought it full circle as to why and how we should think about our customers and the way that we present to them and how we build that trust within them. So that was really, really insightful. And I thank you so much. But before I let you go, we always have a very fun little part to our podcast, which is the lightning round of questions.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, very fun. So basically what we're going to do is 3 very quick questions. First thing that comes to mind, you blur it out. And then we always end on a piece of advice. So we'll do those 3 questions, we'll do the advice, and then we'll be on our way. So first lightning round question is, if you could have anyone as a mentor, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, such a question. I'm going to go straight and say the CEO I mentioned earlier. So Grace Beverly.
Oh my God. Okay. I guess you might say that. That's so
yeah, just because like, I think everything to do with her brand, her business, like her planning, her decisions, it just seems so on point. So I love that. Going straight back to that answer.
I was actually going to say, I wonder if you're going to say that CEO from before, but I don't want to tamper anything.
No, you're right. You know me already.
Okay, awesome. Question number 2, and it can be the same answer if you'd want, but
Right.
I'd encourage you to think outside the box here. What company's brand do you admire the most and why?
That is such a good question again. Oh my gosh. Um,
Tina's very smart. I'll tell you that much.
yeah, this is really hard because all I can think of is those brands that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, yeah, I think brands that cultivate a sense of community are the ones that really inspire me. So I would use those as just fantastic examples of that. Brands that are really just honing in on not only what their target audience member want, but
Yeah.
actually who that is and why they want it. And all of those like very emotional driven factors. It's a smart way to do business. And that's why I really like those brands.
Okay, nice. And actually, it's a true testament to that because you've weaved that example into multiple areas and it's always come to your mind. So obviously they've built trust with you,
Mm,
whether it's the personal branding of the CEO or the actual business itself. Like you've obviously resonated with that business and the owner of it or the leadership in it.
yeah.
So clearly that's an example of itself, how they built trust. It's very cool. All right. Last but not least in the lightning round is which do you think is harder, customer acquisition or customer retention?
To be honest, I'd say retention. I think it's really easy to go out there and paint a beautiful picture of what a product can be. And I've done both. I worked in sales for a long time, and it's very easy to sell something, but retention is delivering upon the sales promise. And you are not going to have retention if your product is not up to the scratch of the person selling it. So it's really easy to be a great well, it's not easy to be a great salesperson, but a great salesperson can easily sell your product. But
Yeah.
it takes a really great retention team to live up to that. So it might be appropriate for this podcast, but yeah, I'm totally on team retention there.
No bias or anything. Not that retention's in the name or anything like that.
No, not at all.
I do agree with you there though, because I feel like even in some of our previous episodes, a lot of our guests have talked about the fact that companies focus a lot on the acquisition with the ads and this and that. And then they forget about the retention, but then it's more fruitful and more beneficial to them to actually spend the time on the retention. It's just a lot harder because it is more of a like a strategy to go ahead with trying to figure out how do you keep those people happy and deliver on those promises.
Definitely. I think sales has really easy KPIs. They're very easy to pinpoint, not necessarily easy to achieve, but it's easier to know what they are. Like why your customers are dropping off. There's so many different factors at play here. So I think retention is like it's a bigger pond to fish in.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. And absolutely last but not least, we always end on a piece of advice to end off the episode. So is there a piece of marketing or life advice that somebody shared with you once that has always stayed with you?
Oh yeah, I think that was my first like really, really good manager told me that ultimately life and work really shouldn't feel as separate as they had felt for me at that time. I was very much feeling like I was going to an office, working, leaving, and then I did the life bit. And he very much showed me how to find like the passion and the motivation within what you were doing. And it just takes that little twist of maybe a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit and thinking. But even within the most constricted corporate environment, you can find something you truly love about what you do that makes you show up for work. And I think just taking a moment to reflect inwards and think like, why am I actually showing up? Or what is the one thing I can find within my career right now that's making me want to go and do it all again tomorrow? So I'd say if you're in a place where you're not totally sure what you want to be doing, then reflect on that and find that one thing that does inspire you, and then try and crowbar that into your job, and it will make you 10 times happier every day.
I do love that, especially given all the time we spend at work. It
We
shouldn't have to
deserve
be a
to like
separate
it.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you deserve to be and enjoying it.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me today on the episode. It was lovely to have you. And I'm excited to see what our listeners have to say about this episode because I think there's just so many incredible insights and golden nuggets of information that they'll take away. So thank you again so much for joining us on the episode today.
And thank you for having me.